Welcome to the distance learning program on cloud computing by Innobus. In this chapter, we'll be covering the topics of Amazon Web Services and its products and services offered under the App Services category. Amazon Web Services offers 4 different services under App Services category. They are SES, also known as Simple Email Service, and SNS, which is Simple Notification Service, and SQS, which is Simple Queuing Service, and SWF, which is Simple Workflow. Let's take a look at what is SES. The Simple Email Service, as the name indicates, it's an email handler for our web service, and it handles the email out of our web server. We are having a web application which requires to send emails in some cases which needs to send millions of emails to its users, and where the server overhead might occur if we use the web server which is running for handling the port 80 request, and if you're running the email handler on the same server, the server overhead might be very much high. And while using the SES service, we are integrating the Amazon Simple Email Service to our web service, and it handles the email parts, or sending and receiving email part of our application. And as usual, that's also works with SMTP, and it has a high capability of sending millions of messages in 24 hours. It's capable of sending hundreds of mails in a minute, and also in seconds it's capable of handling hundreds of mails. It can send as well as receive hundreds of mails in a second. That's the way it's designed as a SMTP cluster, and it has API references. Amazon SES provides API packages for almost all of the programming languages like Python, PHP, Java, and .NET. All these languages are having the API reference package for Amazon, for using the Amazon SES. And how it helps the business: it eliminates the challenges like sending bulk emails for email marketing kind of business. The bulk emails can be handled through Amazon SES for sending the emails, and that too in an environment like sending millions of emails in a day. Let's go ahead and check out how can we configure an simple email service in AWS Management Console. We log into our AWS Management Console. Under App Services, we click on the SES, which is Simple Email Service. And first, when we come to the dashboard, we can see we have got 2 different tabs. One is Request Production Access, and one is Verify New Sender. First, we need to verify our sending email address before we proceed with using SES for our application. So first, we need to verify an email address that is associated with our account, and this is used for the confirmation from the end user side for AWS. So we go ahead and enter the email address which is associated with our business at innobus.com, and we click on Verify Email Address. And after we enter the email address for verification, now we go back to our email address, and we go back to our mail client, or we log into our mail, and we confirm the verification. Then only we will be able to send and receive emails using our email service in AWS, which is SES. Here I have confirmed, I have completed the verification process. So let's go ahead and send a test mail from the email address which we have added under our SES console. And when we confirm our email address with the verification email that we received from Amazon SES, it will take you to our Amazon Web Service page which says congratulations. Now let's go back to AWS Management Console, and we can see that our email address is listed over there. Let's perform a refresh and it says email has been verified. We click on the email address there and now we click on send a test mail. I'm going to send a test mail to the email address which we have created, which we have added to our SES profile. Let's send a test email address, test email to the email address. I'm going to make it as testing SES. Now we click on send test email. Now we go back to our email and we click on that and we receive that email has been received via Amazon SES. We see that here it has been received through Amazon SES. Now this is how we add an email address to an SES system. Also we can add domains. We can also go ahead and add our domains like abc.com or xyz.com and we can send emails using that domain name. So if we have a number of email address which needs to be used to send millions of emails in a day, so it's not practically possible to add all those email address here. So we can add the domain name and we can send emails using that domain under SES. And this is how we add a particular email address and verify that and send emails using this SES service. And when it comes to an application, we can use the SMTP settings. We can see the SMTP settings which is listed over here, the server name and the port number and the authentication. Authentication would be same as like the email address that we have created and its password. So we can use these credentials in the sent mail or in the postfix part of our application to send emails using our SES service. And we can also delete the emails that we have created. Select that email address and click on the button which says remove and remove that center. That center will be completely removed from our SES profile. Now let's go ahead and check what are the advantages of using SES from AWS. The advantages of using SES is that it is simple. As we have seen, it's pretty easy to add a particular domain or email address to an SES profile under AWS Management Console, and it's easy to manage and also it's scalable. We can add our domain, a number of domains and also a number of email address under the SES in AWS, and it is reliable since it runs on Amazon infrastructure. The emailing part is not happening in our web service. It calls a service from AWS infrastructure, and from the AWS infrastructure the email is getting fired to the end user or to the email address to which the email has to be sent. So the sending process, the SMTP process, is happening at the AWS infrastructure, and so it is reliable since it has its operations deployed onto different availability zones, and it is inexpensive. As we know, the SES, it's free up to sending 2,000 emails in a month, and after that it's based on the size of the email that we sent and also the number of emails that we sent. So that's all about the SES under the app services. Now let's go ahead and check what is simple notification service under AWS apps and services. As the name indicates, Amazon SNS, it's a simple notification service which we use to send notifications to the user, and it is protocol enabled. The notification can be sent through SMS, through email, and also HTTP. Request can also be sent as a notification using the SNS service under AWS, and it works with a push mechanism. If we're using the HTTP protocol with our SNS system, whenever we send a notification to a number of users or to a number of devices, in case of a mobile application, the HTTP request will be pushed to the end users or the end user devices using the SNS mechanism. And it is easy to administrate. We can go ahead and add the notifications, and we can add the users who are supposed to get the notifications. We can add new notification, and we can send this notification to a group of users or to a number of users when we need to do that. And also we can also modify this list. We can edit the number of notifications that we sent, and also we can edit the people who are supposed to get the notification. In case of a device, we can have a list of number of devices which are available in the internet who are supposed to get the push notification. We can modify the list based on or by editing the SNS that we create under AWS Management Console. Now let's go ahead and create and launch SNS system from our AWS Management Console. We go ahead and open our AWS Management Console. Here from the AWS Management Console, we go to Simple Notification Service under App Services. And here we can see that we can create a topic. Since we know that it is used for sending notifications, first we go ahead and create a topic, and from this topic we can add a user to the topic who are supposed to get these notifications. So let's give the topic name as InnoBus Cloud and the display name as InnoBus. And we click on create topic. So now the topic is being created under our SNS tab in AWS Management Console. Here we can go ahead and add new subscriptions for this topic. We go ahead and select the topic name, which is by default InnoBus Cloud, since we have selected the notification which or the task that we have added, and we can select what type of protocol. I'm going to select email as a protocol, and I'm going to mention the email address to which we must send the notification. Let's enter our email address, InnoBus Cloud add in the email address. We enter the email address, we give the protocol which we need to use. If you want to use HTML request, we can send the HTML request, and we can also send it as this task as a notification. So we have selected email, and the task will be sent or to the user that we design, which is the endpoint that we describe here, and the notification will be sent to this email address that we describe. So we click on create, and the subscription request is received. Now we have added that particular end user to receive the subscription under this topics. So in case of a notification or a newsletter category, we have to subscribe for this newsletter. The newsletter will be created by the company who has to send the newsletter, and when an end user subscribe for that newsletter, that gets notified to the company that ABC person has been subscribed for the notification for the newsletter. So same works over here under SNS. When we add an email under a particular subscription or under a particular tab, topic, so it sends a request for confirmation to that email address whether that email address should receive the notification from this particular topic or not. So let's go ahead and confirm the request that we received. We have received the verification email for confirmation, which says our AWS notification, and says from InnoBus. So let's go ahead and click on confirm subscription. Again, we'll get another congratulations page which says that the subscription has been confirmed. Now it has been confirmed, and we go ahead and refresh under our AWS Management Console, and it says it has been confirmed. So now we can go ahead and send this notification to these users. So we go ahead and create a notification, and we introduce SNS in AWS Cloud as a subject, and SNS in AWS Cloud Works. And we can also set whether the same message body for all protocols, and we go ahead and click on publish the message. and the message has been published under the topic InnoBus Cloud. After publishing the message, how can we verify whether the list of users or the people who have subscribed for this topic have received it or not? So we go back to our email address and we see that we have received another email from InnoBus. We click on that and it says SNS in AWS Cloud Works, which is a notification which we have just published under our SNS category in AWS console. So this is how the simple notification system works. It's used mainly for business who sends a lot of notifications to a particular number of users or to a group of users, and it could be based on an HTML request if you're sending a request to a number of applications which are running on mobile devices in case of mobile applications, and these notifications will be pushed to the devices where the application is alive. So, and the list of the subscription will be automatically added when a person installs that applications into his or her device. So it automatically reflects through the web application into the SNS system. So when the company employee comes and sends out a notification, he just creates on the published topic and enter the information which needs to be passed to the public and click on publish message. And as per the protocol, if it is HTTP, the push notification will be passed to the application, and if it is a mail, the email will be passed to the email address that we mentioned under the subscription list. So this is how the simple notification system works under AWS Management Console. Now let's go ahead and check what are the advantages of using simple notification service under AWS Management Console. Here are the advantages of using AWS SNS Simple Notification Service. It is reliable since we run the application under AWS infrastructure, same as like SES. It is reliable since the notification, all the requests that we send through SES is being handled by AWS, and it is scalable. We can go ahead and add the number of users, and there is no limit to adding the number of subscriptions, and also we can go ahead and create number of topics under our SNS category, and it's scalable by all point of view, by sending the notification as well as to add the recipient who are supposed to get the notification. And also it is flexible since it gives the options like HTTP, email and SMS protocol options to send these notifications. It gives the great flexibility to the developer who designs the web application, and also it is secured. The SNS always ensures that the access to the notification, to the subscription or to the topic ads or the data that we add to the topic is always accessed by an authorized entry. It never gives access to that particular SNS console without IAM password or with a multi-factor authentication. And it is inexpensive. While compared to other notification systems having a particular hardware running out in our in-house data center or an on-premises server, it's better to have the services running on AWS since we don't need to care about the ISP connection and the hardware configuration, the patch management. When it comes to SNS, everything is going to be handled by AWS, and we pay for the notification that we sent based on the size of the content that we passed through the AWS SNS. Now let's go ahead and check what are the other products offered under the app services. It is simple queuing services, which is Amazon SQS. It offers a reliable and highly scalable hosted queue for storing messages between computers or compute units. It provides high availability. The developer can use the SQS service for moving their data between distributed components of the applications that perform each task, and that too without losing the message. And there is no additional package needed for running the SQS since it runs as a web service under AWS Management Console. We can call the web service using the curl kind of technology, and we can call the web service and we can perform the queuing action using SQS. And we don't need to install any additional package, or we don't need to use any software for using the SQS. And it always gives a high retention period. Since we know it's a queuing service, the data is being queued from one service to another, and this queue is being handled by SNS. And SNS is designed to keep or to retain the data that comes to the queue for the 14 days. The data in the SNS queue, the life of the data in SNS queue is up to 14 days, and it is capable enough to handle a single data of up to 64 KB of text in any format. And also another important point is that it supports simultaneous read and write options. It's possible with SQS. It simultaneously reads and also writes the queuing, the component which comes to the queue. If it has to give the queue object to another component, it gives, and if it has to take the object from another component of a compute unit, it takes that. So read and write happens in the real time simultaneously. Let's log into our AWS Management Console and let's see how we can launch the new simple queuing system. So we go to the simple queuing service console under AWS Management Console, and we click on create new queue. So let's give the name as Innovus Cloud, and it says the default visibility timeout, for how long it has to be visible, and it says 30 seconds by default. And also the maximum retention period, we can set up to 14 days for the retention period in here, and the maximum size is up to 64 KB for any format of data in text. And the delivery delay, if you want to set a delay for delivering the objects in the queue to the another part or another component of our web service, we can set the delivery delay. In this case, we are not going to set the delivery delay, we are going to create the queue here. Now we can see that our queue has been created. Now what we are going to do is, like, we are going to send a message through this queue. We are going to send it as test queue, and the delivery delay I'm not going to give the delivery delay, and we click on send message, and it says that these are the message attributes which will be sent, and we click on close. Now we have created a queue and we have added a message to the queue. Now let's go ahead and check what are the messages, or let's see what's there in the queue. So when we click on the queue actions under the SQS, we can see how to view and delete the queue. We click on that, and when we come to this tab, we can see start polling for messages. So when we click on start polling, it starts polling the different queuing services which are running under our AWS queuing service. We click on start polling messages. Now we see that the test queue is being listed, and we can see a yellow bar is going from the left to the right. So when it comes to the right, the yellow will become green, and the message queue will be polled, and that will be delivered to the end user who are supposed to get the message using the simple queuing service. We can also integrate the simple email service with this, so that the emails will be handled through the queuing service to the SES, and the end user will get the message delivered. And we click on close. So same as like this, we can go ahead and create a simple queuing service under our AWS Management Console, and we can use it for any kind of job queuing service that we need to create under our web application. If our web application is supposed to send particular number of, or is supposed to carry out, if we are having an inventory management system, if end of the day, if it is supposed to collect the number of items under a particular category, and there are number of categories, so we can process these requests under the queue using simple queuing service. where the queuing will be queued under the AWS SQS, and overhead does not comes to the server which is running the inventory management system. And after completing the queue, the data will be delivered to the database where it needs to be updated. And we can also delete the queue by clicking at the queue actions, and we go ahead and click on delete queue. And since we have one message there, it shows that we have one message which we have sent right now using the queue. Since we have sent, we don't need to read that again, so we click on delete queue. Now the queue has been deleted from our AWS SQS console. Now let's go ahead and check what are the advantages of using Amazon queuing services. The advantages are like it is possible to, it is reliable, and it is simple. Since it is running under AWS infrastructure, it is reliable, and since we don't need to take care of about the network infrastructure, the patch management, since it's running under the AWS infrastructure, AWS will be taken care of, and the routine update management will be happening at the AWS end. And it is simple, since we have seen it takes hardly 2 to 3 minutes to add a SQS service under AWS services, and we need to integrate the same details with the API reference or with our web service code for queuing services. And it is scalable. We can go ahead and add any number of queue under the SQS, and based on the traffic or based on the requirement for our web service. And it is secure. It always transfers the data through the SSL and encrypted format, so it's always secure, and it is inexpensive when setting up a hardware and managing the hardware and configuring the hardware for queuing service. It's better to have the service running under AWS cloud, and we don't need to spend money on hardware, setting up the hardware and management of that hardware. Everything will be taken care of by AWS SQS services. Now let's go ahead and check what is Amazon SWF, which is Simple Workflow Management System by AWS Web Services. And the SWF is a simple service for building scalable and resilient applications. The applications like banking and insurance applications are in other words, we can say SWS most suits for the applications which has high number of transactions, where like insurance processing and banking, where the accuracy needs to be more than 99.999%, and the transaction has to be performed in the real time without any delay or latency. So in that point of time, it's better to have AWS's SWF in action. Since it has high transaction processing power, it's better suits for insurance and banking sector web applications. And it also ensures high level of consistency. And how it ensures the consistency, since it is a workflow management system, each and every workflow will be having, or the executions will be done in the real time, and these executions will be stored in the history. So it always ensures the consistency of execution history, and it provides high visibility to these executions. The executions are nothing but the actions performed in the real time using the SWF for workflow. Workflow can be moving of transaction from one web service to another web service. In case of a banking application, the workflow is simple, like the end user goes to the ATM and withdraws the money. In the background, when the end user enters the ATM, when he or she puts the card into the ATM, from the very next moment, there is a transaction begins, and it gets updated in the real time in the database. At what time and from which ATM this has been happened, and what was the transactions. So these transactions needs a high processing power which AWS offers, and SWS offers, and it processes these transactions in the real time with high compute power, and also it updates this execution history into the server between different web service as well as database service components. And it holds and dispatches these tasks. Each and every transactions can be handled by the AWS workflow system. Let it be a write option or let it be a write action or a read action. These will be handled by the SWF workflow management system. And it also retains the history. Why it retains the history? For future reference, or in case of any kind of failure, or in case of a history needs to be audited, the history always retained by the SWF. Now let's go ahead and create a simple workflow in AWS Management Console, and let's see how the SWF works with its high computing power. We log into our AWS Management Console and we go to the SWF Simple Workflow Management System, and we click on the Launch Simple Walkthrough. So this is how it works. We go ahead and create a domain, register workflow and the activity types. We deploy the code to workflow orchestration and logic activities, with running the execution, and when the execution is completed, it automatically shuts down the compute unit that has been used for the workflow system. So let's go ahead and click on Get Started. So we give the domain name as innobus.com. We click on Continue. Now the registration has been completed. So we go to the next stage. Here it's asking for us to select from which S3 bucket it has to take the data. We'll give CL demo, and we can terminate the instance after 30 minutes when the workflow is completed, and we need to acknowledge that the charges will be there for using the EC2, and we click on Continue. Now when the deployment happens, it may take up to 3 minutes for completing the deployment, because it works as the figure indicates. The AWS SWF works in coordination with EC2 as well as the data in the S3 bucket. So it may take 3 minutes to complete the deployment of EC2 as well as S3 for performing the workflow through AWS SWF. Now the deployment has been completed, so we click on Continue. Here we go ahead and say what has to be done in the execution part of this workflow. Let's go ahead and create a workflow for uploading a particular image to the S3 bucket through the workflow. And let's go ahead and select the image, and let's select it as Convert to Grayscale, and let's create a execution ID here. Execution ID would be innobus SWF, and we click on the Run Execution. Okay, it says the workflow type that we have specified is already deprecated. So let's go ahead and create another name for this domain. So we need to go back. Since it says already deprecated, because we have already used the domain name innobus for the registration of SWF, so we cannot use that domain name again. Now I've given another domain name, so let's complete the deployment and let's go ahead and upload our data from the S3. And the workflow that we are going to create is to change a particular image, or the execution is to process the image that we upload from our S3 bucket. So let's wait until it completes the deployment under SWF. Now the deployment has been completed, so we click on Continue, and we're going to upload a particular data which we need to process, and we're going to give the execution ID as innoexecute, and we're going to click on Run this execution. And let's go ahead and go to the console, and let's see what is the status of our domain which I have added, abc.com, and let's see whether the job has been completed or not. Let's go to workflow executions and let's see what is the active. The innoexecute is one of the active which is running under our AWS SWF console. Here, when the process is completed, we can say that the child policy will be terminated. When the job flow is completely completed, so the instance which we use to process our workflow under the SWF, those instances will be terminated automatically when we complete this particular job flow. And let's see what are the events. The events are like what are the tasks that has been started, and the workflow execution, the conversion of the particular image which we upload has been completed. Now let's go to the activities and let's see what are the activities. Okay, these are the activities. It has been completed the grayscale transformation and S3 upload, and it has deleted the local file as well. Now let's go back to the dashboard and let's see what is the output that we get from the AWS SWF workflow management system. Now in the dashboard we can see that the execution of processing the image has been completed, and when we click on that we can see the image processing has been completed. So now since we have given the object in S3 bucket, let's go ahead and access our S3 bucket and let's see whether the image has been processed or not. Let's go back to S3 bucket using the plugin S3 Fox. We launched the S3 bucket from the Firefox browser, and we have mentioned the image under Innobus S3 bucket. We open the bucket and we can see the converted image is there. Let's go ahead and right click and let's copy the URL, and let's open a new tab and let's paste the URL, and let's see what is the processed image. Yeah, the image has been processed under the grayscale which we have mentioned. So this is how the AWS SWF works. It's used for high computing or high performance programming or for high performance applications, same as like web services which is running for insurance or for banking. The same happens in the image processing. So we use the SWF for even for image processing, and it processes the data that we give, and since we have mentioned it as grayscale, it has changed the image into a grayscale. It has processed the image using image processor, and we have given the output. So this is how we deal with SWF under AWS Management Console. Now let's go ahead and check what are the advantages of using SWF. The advantages are like it is simple, since we know the image processing units are pretty difficult to create. So by using the AWS simple workflow management system, we can go ahead and create that in less than 10 minutes of times, and it's easy to manage and administrate, and it's also simple to create, and it is scalable. We can go ahead and create any number of requests for workflow processing, and it is scalable based on the input request. It can be from one data to a number of data, so based on that request it processes the input that we give, and it's scalable. If we plan to give or we plan to execute a simple workflow of a small data, and in the future if we plan to increase the size of this data, that's possible with AWS simple workflow system, and it is flexible. We can go ahead and create our workflow, and we can run this workflow on the object which we insist in the AWS SWF to perform the job flow or the workflow that can be at the user defined time, and it is flexible since the end user can define when to run and when not to run, or when to execute the data which we give to AWS SWF process. So that's all about the AWS as app services like SNS, SES, and SQS and SWF services. Thank you.